Hi everyone, there was a brilliant article last week that I never got a chance to cover about Julian Assange in RT. Oh my God, Gordon, RT, you Kremlin stooge, you're Putin's puppet, you on the payroll of Putin. I know I'm joking, but people really do say that to me. They really do. This is, to give this the full context, this is written by Annie Machon. And if you don't know who she is, join the club. I didn't know who she was until last week either. It says there at the very top, Annie Machon is a former intelligence officer for MI5, the UK security service, who resigned in the late 1990s to blow the whistle on the spies' incompetence and crimes of her ex-partner, David Shayler. I remember that name. Drawing on her varied experiences, she is now a public speaker, writer, media pundit, international tour and event organiser, public campaigner, and PR consultant. No, that's going to be one big business card that she's got. She has a rare perspective on both the inner workings of governments, intelligence agencies and the media, as well as wider implications for the need for increased openness and accountability in both public and private sectors. So she's got quite a CV. This is what she says. To be quite honest, this is brilliant, and it's an angle that I haven't seen before either. And certainly I haven't, hasn't registered in my tiny little brain. The article says this: if Dirty Dossier author Christopher Steele deserves protection under the First Amendment, but WikiLeaks' Julian Assange doesn't, then the concept of a free press is merely a distant memory. While it is all too easy to become frustrated and annoyed by what passes for news in the legacy media these days, this article in the Daily Mail did arouse my particular ire earlier this week. And in this instance, no particular blame attaches to the newspaper. It is simply reporting some unpalatable facts. Wow, Daily Mail reporting facts. The devil's on his way because hell has frozen over. The gist of it is that former British MI6 intelligence officer and current mercenary spy for hire Christopher Steele, author of the discredited Dirty Dossier about Donald Trump, has been accorded First Amendment rights in a court case in the United States. Has he? I haven't heard of this in the media. You might wonder why this article caused me so much spluttering annoyance over my breakfast. Steele's treatment is in marked contrast to that accorded to WikiLeaks publisher and editor-in-chief Julian Assange, and the hypocrisy is breathtaking. Allow me to expound. Steele is a British intelligence officer of pretty much my vintage. According to what is available publicly, he worked for MI6, the British Overseas Intelligence Gathering Agency, for 22 years, serving in Russia in the early 1990s and in Paris at the end of the decade. Around that time, MI5 whistleblower David Shayler was imprisoned in that city pending a failed extradition case to the UK. It is probable that Steele would have been monitoring us then. After being outed as an MI6 officer in 1999 by his former colleague, Richard Tomlinson, he was pretty much desk-bound in London until he resigned in 2009 to set up, in the inimitable way of so many former spooks, a private consultancy that can provide plausibly deniable services to corporations and perhaps their former employees. At this stage, I'm thinking that's Orbis Business Intelligence. That's the one that the British press put a D notice on when Sergei Skripal was poisoned. Yes, those two things are connected. If you seeing my videos for the first time, check out the video I did on my channel called MI6 Spies, Sergei Skripal MI6 Spies, D notices and the dodgy dossier. That will explain it all. Steele established such a mercenary spy outfit, Orbis Business Intelligence, with another ex-colleague, Chris Burrows, in 2009. Orbis made its name in exposing corruption at the heart of FIFA in 2015 and was thereafter approached as an outsourced partner by Fusion GPS, the company initially hired to dig dirt on presidential candidate Trump in 2016 by one of his Republican rivals, which was then used to dig up dirt on behalf of Hillary Clinton's DNC. The result is what has become known as the Dirty Dossier, a grubby collection of prurient gossip with no real evidence or properly sourced information. As a former MI6 intelligence officer, Steele should be hanging his head in shame at such a shoddy and embarrassing half-baked report. On a slightly tangential note, there has been some speculation, suppressed in the UK, at least via D-Notice censorship system, again, I've told you all about this, that MI6 informant and Russian traitor Sergei Skripal, the victim of alleged Novichok poisoning in the UK earlier this year, remained in contact with his alleged handler Pablo Miller, who was also the source of one of those D-notices by the British media, as I've reported before, who also is reported to work for Business Orbis Intelligence, or rather Orbis Business Intelligence. My dyslexia is just getting worse. If this were indeed the case, then it would be a logical assumption that Orbis via Miller might well have used Skripal as one of the reliable sources for the dossier, and this is a point I have made over and over again. When the details of the dodgy dossier came out back in 2017, just before or just after Trump was, I think it was just before he was inaugurated, came out in BuzzFeed. They printed the dossier when nobody else would because they knew that there were some spurious allegations in there. BuzzFeed reported it. The first thing the British press did was the British government did was slap a D notice on the British press for mentioning his name. The BBC, the Telegraph, and I think the Guardian all did mention his name. They went against the D notice, but by then, I think it was a case of his name was all over the media in America and online. So there was no point in them abiding by that D notice. They did, however, abide by the D notice that the government gave them on Pablo Miller and Orbis Business Intelligence when Sergei Skripal was poisoned. Now, I know some people will say, oh, well, you know, if the two things are connected, then it's probably Russia. Well, maybe not. Maybe somebody that they got some information from was, I don't know, a Russian oligarch or some other state actor who thought that his life was in danger because he gave some information, true or otherwise, on the Kremlin. You just don't know. It could be anybody. And the fact that it was such a botched job, you know, such a botched job with this Novichok that wasn't mixed correctly. It was meant to be a fourth generation nerve agent and 5 to 8 times more deadly than VX. It's just, there's so many holes in the story. The article continues, despite all this, Steele has won a legal case in the USA. This is where it gets interesting. Where he had been sued by 3 Russian oligarchs who claimed that the dirty dossier traduced their reputations. And he won on the basis that his report was protected by First Amendment rights under the Constitution of America, which guarantees US citizens the right to freedom of expression, despite the fact that Christopher Steele is British. Quote, but Judge Anthony Epstein disagreed, writing in his judgment that advocacy on issues of public interest has the capacity to inform public debate and thereby furthers the purposes of the First Amendment, regardless of the citizenship or residency of the speakers. Why isn't that afforded to Julian Assange as well? This is the nub of the issue. Steele, a former UK intelligence officer and current mercenary spy for hire, is granted legal protection by the American courts for digging up and subsequently leaking what appears to be controversial and defamatory information about the current US president, as well as various Russians, all paid by Trump's political opponents. Yes, this was all paid by Fusion GPS, which was linked to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And Steele is given full protection of the US legal system. On the other hand, we have an award-winning journalist and publisher, Assange, whose organisation, WikiLeaks, has never been found to report anything factually incorrect in more than 10 years, being told that if he were to be extradited from his current political asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London to face the full wrath of a vengeful American establishment, he is not entitled to claim the protection of the First Amendment because he is an Australian citizen, not an American. Regular viewers of my channel will know that I've been saying for a while now we're living in an Orwellian nightmare, and we are. And this really is a case of some animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Christopher Steele, obviously, a little bit more equal than Julian Assange. I'll read the rest of this because it really was an excellent article. It has been an open secret for years that the US government has installed a secret grand jury in Virginia, the home of the CIA, to investigate Assange and bring him to justice for publishing embarrassing US government documents as well as evidence of war crimes. There have been calls from US politicians for the death sentence, life in prison without parole, and even assassination. I believe Hillary Clinton was one of the people who joked about drone bombing him. The US has been scrabbling around for years to try and find any charge it could potentially throw at him. Hell, it will probably make up a new law just for him, so desperate as it is to make an example of him. I have said that before. They'll probably make up some trumped up law and call it cyber espionage or something like that. Wouldn't be surprised if it's a totally new thing that they charge him with. However, the fake Russiagate narrative given to the US deep state and the additional spur against all evidence and Assange's own statements, it alleges that Russia hacked the DNC and protested emails, and Assange was a conduit to make them public. This is seen as a win-win for the US establishment, apparently, if erroneously proving that Russia hacked the US presidential election and confirming that Assange runs a non-state hostile intelligence agency, according to former CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who is now, of course, Secretary of State. Except he does not. He is an editor running a high-tech publishing outfit that has caused embarrassment to governments and corporations around the world, not just America. If he can be prosecuted for publishing information very much in the public interest, then all the legacy media feeding off the WikiLeaks hydrant of information are equally vulnerable. Yes, let's remember, The Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they all published stuff that Edward Snowden leaked. They won't be able to do that in future, will they, if they get Assange? Article concludes, this being the case, surely he, of all people, requires the protection of the First Amendment in the United States, otherwise the concept that free media can hold power to account is surely dead. That really was a great article. I just wanted to read you it all, but it perfectly shows the United States foreign policy and the government of being absolute 100% cast iron hypocrites here. Steele has given them, the powers that be, the press, this dodgy dossier, which is just full of infactual stuff and full of casting aspersions which cannot be proved and haven't been proved at all. And he's protected under First Amendment rights in America, even though he's British. Assange publishes stuff that is in the public interest, that the public should see, that shows that the Democratic establishment is cheating and lying to the public. And he's not protected under the same rights as Steele for telling the truth. The stuff in the dossier, everybody says lies. Nobody says the stuff that WikiLeaks and Julian Assange released about the release of the emails of the DNC hack. Nobody says that those were false because they were right. That was the source. They're using this to their own end. All animals are equal. Some animals are more equal than others. That's what this is a case of. And the fact that the media aren't jumping down, up and down and screaming about this just goes to show how scared the media are. Just goes to show it. There was a little clip that I saw in Citizen 4. I rewatched it again the other day. And there's a clip in it of how the UK establishment really came down on The Guardian after they printed the stuff that Snowden had given them. They really did come down on The Guardian. The UK establishment actually held Glenn Greenwald's partner, I've forgotten his name now, David something. They held him for 8 hours because he was connected to Glenn Greenwald. That's what the establishment do in the UK. I can only assume it's just as bad, if not worse, in America. And finding out that Christopher Steele is protected under First Amendment rights and not Julian Assange just goes to show the hypocrisy of the ruling establishment that we have to fight back against. Please support Julian however you can. Whether you like him or not as a person, he deserves the same treatment as anybody in the media who is reporting things that are true and things that are should be in the public eye, that are factual. He's a hero as far as I'm concerned, and I'd be surprised if you didn't feel the same way. If you like this video and you want to hear more, please click subscribe and click the bell down there as well so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. Otherwise, YouTube will hide it from you, any future videos. They have admitted that they do that. We are facing an absolute onslaught, a barrage from both the corporate media and corporations who are trying to silence our voices. They're trying to stop us from bringing you the truth and cutting through the partisan BS that you get in the mainstream media. They don't like it. We're their competition. So if you can support channels like mine, please do so. Please share the videos wherever you can. Talk to your friends and family and spread the word about what we're doing. If you can support us on Patreon, please do so as well. The link is down there. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, and every bit helps. We cannot do this without your support. Thanks very much for your support. Until next time, peace and take care.